Dale Little here with Rescue American Ministries, and I want to talk to you just a little bit. I hope you'll stay with me. I know some of you will not for various reasons, but that be as it may, I think this will help you. If you're a ministry leader, if you're a pastor, or you're just a servant that has a zeal for serving God, or maybe you're someone that's kind of given up and lost hope, and things just haven't gone well for you, not been productive for whatever reason. I hope this will encourage you some. But when Ahab came on the scene, let me read just a little bit here of 1 Kings 16, the latter few verses, starting verse 30. And Ahab the son of Omri did evil in the sight of the Lord above all that were before him. And it came to pass, as it had been a light thing for him to walk in the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, he took to wife Jezebel, the daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. Remember that she was of this king of the Zidonians, and went and served Baal and worshipped him. And he reared up an altar for Baal in the house of Baal, which he had built in Samaria. And Ahab made a grove, and Ahab did more to provoke the Lord God of Israel to anger than all the kings of Israel that were before him. In his days did Hiel the Bethelite build Jericho. He laid the foundation thereof in Abiram, his firstborn, and set up the gates thereof, and his youngest son Segub, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by Joshua the son of Nun. And then in chapter 17, Elijah comes on the scene, and Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be a dew or rain these years, but according to my word. Now, Elijah spent a good bit of time down by this brook that God had sent him to him. He said, hide thyself by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. Now, God told him to go there and hide. So keep that in mind, for one thing, because later on, he had to go hide again a few years later. But for the meantime, he was down at this brook for a lengthy period of time. Here he had announced that there'd be no rain. God is working great things through him, and the whole nation. This is something that the whole nation sees. It's a drought, and he's made the proclamation. Ahab knows it, the king, and he made it to him. He said there'll be no rain. And so while he's down by the brook, the ravens provided for him until the brook dried up eventually. And so he had to go where? Arise and get to the Zarephath, which belonged to Zidon. Remember, the king of the Zidonians was the father of Jezebel. However, he's here, and he comes across this widow woman, and he asks her to fix him a little water, and then asked for a morsel of bread. And she said, I've only enough for me and my son, before we die. And there was, it's a pretty hopeless situation. How long Elijah spent here it's a lengthy time, out of sight of anybody. Here is a miracle that God does, because she went ahead and did as he asked. And God provided for her and her son. From then on, the bread, the meal did not run out. Every time she took some out, there's more in the next time. And so, most of me, if you're a servant of God, you know that this miracle, and it's a great miracle he did. But look at it this way. When he comes out, after God finally tells him to go to Ahab and tell him that I'm getting ready to send rain. That was another issue. But he goes up to Mount Carmel, and God does a great victory up there, a great miracle. He's standing against all these hundreds of worshipers of Baal, and he invites them to challenges them. Well, let's see who God answers. And so God instructed Elijah what to do. He built an altar, and put the meat on it, and had the prophets of Baal to do the same, and they danced around and got all day long and cut themselves, and nothing happened. And they finally it came Elijah's turn. He poured water all over his sacrifice, and he'd made the challenge was that whichever God answers by fire is the true God. And sure enough, God sent fire down and consumed that sacrifice. It had been saturated with water. The water poured all around it, and the fire consumed it. And so a great victory was there. God commanded Elijah to slay all those false prophets of Baal. And when Jezebel found out about it, she sent word that his life was next, Elijah. And so Elijah ran in fear, and he went to hide again by Brook. Spent, I know at least one of the times, I think he spent 3 years there. I think it was the first time, but I'm not getting into all that. This came to me. I said, thinking about my own ministry, I said, I need to share it. Because I feel like I've been many times in my own ministry. I've been down to the Brook, and I've not always been as, I guess, quick as a learner, maybe as Elijah. I don't know. I don't know the reasoning. But I know my time down seems by this brook, so to speak. In other words, a place where it seems like you're not getting a whole lot done. You're not seeing the big crowds. You're not seeing the ministry being productive like you did, or like you've been wanting it to see. You have a passion to see people move, but they're not. And there's been times it seems like a long dry spell, and it's been longer than 3 years sometimes for me. And then the mountaintop comes, and you get these great experiences, and God elevates you to a point, and sometimes you're back down again. And that was Elijah, believe it or not. It speaks of this time down at by the brook, and we criticize him, and yes, he was in the wrong in a sense, but maybe we should understand Elijah a little bit. And that when he ran from Jezebel, you remember when he said there'd be no more rain, God told him, well, you better go hide now, because they're going to be after you. They're going to be looking for you. They're going to take your life. So God hid him and told him where to hide, and God provided for him. So here it comes up again. His life is threatened. So what does he do? Well, thing is, it's kind of like Moses, where he struck the rock. He was instructed to strike the rock the first time, and water came out. But the second time, God did not instruct him to strike the rock. He told him to do something different, but he got angry and struck the rock. So out of fear, Elijah went and did what God told him to do before. He ran to hide. And God did provide for him again. And but this was the time before. But I'm just saying that time came when there was great miracle that God did after this time. But right now, look where he's at. He's where some of you may be at right now, and you may be wondering, maybe things are not going as productive as you think they should. Stop and think about it. Let me look at this. We remember in the scriptures that great miracle that God did up on Mount Carmel, don't we? But do you understand that even though it seems like he's down by this brook, everybody saw that miracle in a sense. The whole nation knew about what happened on Mount Carmel, I promise you. Jezebel heard real quick. Ahab was there, eyewitness, and the whole nation, I'm sure, knew about what happened on Mount Carmel. But here, he's doing things, and there's a couple other things that he did. But here, he's ministering just to this widow, and nobody knows that's even happening, except for just a few people here, I'm sure, that's close to her. But guess what? God saw to put it in the scriptures here for us to read today to encourage us. And this miracle is just as inspiring to us today as the miracle on Mount Carmel, is it not? We talk about it quite often. So God worked a great miracle even while Elijah wasn't seeing a whole lot going on as far as ministry and miracles go. But God did a great miracle here. And He's put it in His Word to preserve it for us. So what I'm saying is, while right now you may not seem productive in what you're doing, maybe not where you've been at one time or where you hope to be, the time may come yet. Don't give up. Don't despair. Don't fret too much. It's always good to be wondering, well, do I need to do this or do I need to do that? Yes, I've been there. In a sense, I'm there now. I am doing, ministry, but it's not. I feel like I'm, kind of by the brook, but not entirely. But not like I have been before. I realize I'm still staying active, ministering, but it's not like I was at one time or a couple times before. I was area director for Rescue America, not area director for Prison Fellowship Ministers for a number of years, 5.5 years, and was director for Western half of North Carolina. That's a wonderful ministry that God allowed me to be a part of. And I remember somebody saying, well, you might end up working for them one day. That's why I was a volunteer. And I thought that was the craziest thing I ever heard. That's a volunteer organization. Very few, only had a handful of staff in the whole state of North Carolina. But, a couple months later, I was offered that position, and I took it. Spent 5.5 years